One. Hey, James, how's it going?
Good morning.
Good morning,
Good evening.
James. Yeah,
Good
we're
evening.
here.
Did you
We're here.
sleep well?
I slept well. We're here, and it's Thursday on planet
We got
Earth.
we got cut off
We did indeed. That's very
talking
rude, wasn't it?
about talking about the late great John Mayall because I was talking for England and we got cut off.
It
But
happens.
yeah,
But
it
what's
does.
special about today, James?
Today is the fourth anniversary of Peter Green's death.
And standing just behind you is a instrument that was once owned by Peter Green, and we're not talking about Greeny, the Les Paul, there, are
Oh
we?
no, that's Greeny. You know, I went round Kirk Hammett's and just distracted him and sort of went, um and just nicked it and replaced
Well,
his with a Chibson.
the
No,
world. Yeah.
the oud. Peter's guitars and instruments were up for auction. You went along to that auction, didn't you?
I went on behalf of a very famous guitar player in America who I won't mention, but he's a lovely guy, and we
Uh-huh.
got him the guitar, and he's very happy with it.
Oh no, that's sweet. It's nice to
Yeah.
have something like that. I mean, I think I've got one of Peter's. I got a delay pedal.
Oh,
That's Peter's.
is that Peters?
Yeah, it's Peter's. Well, I didn't have a
Wow.
delay pedal, but then of course I can't take it anywhere and use it in case anything happened. And I wanted to learn that I had an oud years
Oh,
ago, and
can I just say this?
David Graham used to play an oud.
Sorry,
Go on,
sorry about this, guys. Sorry about this, guys. I
go on.
don't want to interrupt you, James, but you said a delay was owned by Peter Green. This
Yeah.
delay was owned by Rick Vito from Fleetwood Mac Connection. Rick Vito.
Well, amazing.
And also Dumble, and it's actually got Dumble etched on the on here on you can't really see it in the light. I don't
Yeah,
know, maybe you can see it there. Just it's very faint. Can you see that?
I can see.
And that's
Yeah.
Dumble. This was owned by Howard Dumble and Rick Vito.
Wow.
So there you go.
I've got some delay spray that used to belong to Kirk Hammett. That was a
Spray.
joke. That was a joke. It was a joke. A rude joke.
No, no,
Um,
no, no.
no, the
Mm.
oud, because Peter Green used to play oud, and he was my favorite acoustic player, and Peter's my favorite electric player. And I
Yeah,
had a good look round at the stuff that was, going up for auction, and
yeah.
I get the feeling Peter probably didn't play half of those guitars. They were an investment. Um, obviously the really nice items were I mean, he had there was something like this, but this isn't it.
There was, yeah. Well, he
A
had that on an
beautiful,
album cover, didn't he?
he had a beautiful. Well, I always thought that belonged to Nigel Watson, but it was sold as Peter's. And then there was the black Howard Roberts fusion guitar that he launched his
Yeah,
comeback with,
yeah, he
and
did.
that was
Was that
the
Guildford
last time
Blues?
yeah, I was there, and the last time I'd seen that guitar was at one of those
Hold
early
on,
Splinter Group gigs.
hold on. You were there at Guildford.
Yeah.
That's frigging amazing. Because you know who
Oh,
else was there, don't you?
Eric
Yeah.
Clapton.
I think he turned up in his Ferrari or something.
I didn't see Eric there. I saw Cliff Ongier. He'd had a few sherbets. He was a great acoustic blues
Hmm.
player and a lovely, lovely man from
Hmm.
Twickenham. God rest his soul. But that was a lovely day. And so Peter launched the Splinter Group using this
Yeah.
beautiful Gibson Black Howard Roberts fusion guitar. And he got sponsored by Gibson, and they didn't like him playing Fenders at the shows because they were sponsoring him. And I think
Oh, okay, yeah.
that was one of the reasons he was like, oh
He
God, not
sounded
all
pretty
this
good.
again.
He sounded pretty good.
Oh, he sounded great. Yeah.
This
Go on.
guitar here is it's a handmade guitar. You know it's Providence. I can't really talk too much about it, but
No.
but this has got the Alan Dingwell Peter Green set, so you can.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Woo. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's that business, you know. Which is,
Yeah.
but that you got that oud, so because
Well, I
he,
thought, I could have got a guitar, but I've got millions of them. If you saw the other side of this room, you'd freak out. But it's a mental illness, obviously. But it's
quest,
kind of nice. The only problem with this is I don't really want to fiddle about with it too much because of who it belonged to.
yeah,. Don't touch it.
You know what I mean? It's
Don't tune it. Don't
well,
do anything.
I had to get it back home on the bus from wherever where was it? It was near
It was in
Harrods up in
Western London, yeah, West London, yeah,
yeah. So
yeah.
I
A
went up
posh
and had a
spot.
good look round, and they were selling.
Yeah,
There were lyrics and there were a few bits and pieces that were
yeah.
what on earth are they flogging this for? And it was a little bit sad, but then I think all of those things are going to good homes.
And it's just nice, isn't it? Yeah, yeah.
People really love Peter, and they love it was very touching. The
And there's an
music is
energy,
so good.
some people think there's an energy because he owned it. Maybe an energy there.
Well, Joe Green, God bless Joe Green,
Oh,
and
sad.
he told me that he remembered seeing the oud
Can you
on
tell
Peter's
everyone,
wall at home.
James?
Well,
Can you tell
Joe
everyone?
and I were chatting online about a couple of things recently, and he said he remembered seeing the oud at Peter's on the wall there. And
Right.
but Joe was a sax player, really
From
good sax player,
Southend, Leon South End.
professional sax player. He didn't trade off of being Peter Green's nephew, but it was on the web
Mm.
page because he was proud of it. And he
Yeah.
took Peter out for day trips and got him out of the house and kept him going. And then lockdown happened.
He
And
went to
I don't know if he was able to see Peter at that time. And I think that it affected Peter very badly.
he went to
Pete,
the show. Joe Green went to the tribute for
yeah,
Mick Fleetwood put that show
yeah,
on. Joe and his wife went there.
yeah, yeah. So, but he was a good lad, and he played well. He'd turn up immaculately dressed for a professional engagement and play beautiful music. But he died.
Yeah, very sad.
That was kind of what
He was like he's my
January.
age. It was like my age.
No, but I don't quite know, and it's been a very difficult 4 years for the whole family. There's
Yeah.
family members going through absolute, it's
You're
not
here one
good.
day,
And
gone the next.
well, that was a shock, and
Right.
I'm sorry about,
Yeah.
I'm sorry to the family and everybody that knew and loved him, and he seemed like a nice guy to me, always smiling, and yeah,
James,
a great professional player.
question, James. Right, I'm going to press
Yeah.
you. I'm going to press you today.
Oh no.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
What the hell went on with the Splinter Group? What was all that about? There was some crazy stuff, especially at the end. Especially at the end of the what? Can you just tell me how it began and then why it went all kind of tits up at the end?
Okay. I mean, well, the genesis of the Splinter Group, I mean, it began because Nigel Watson had been a friend of Peter's since the early 70s. Now, Nigel's sister was married to Fleetwood Mac's manager, Clifford Davies, right? Beautiful woman, stunning. And but they broke up. Clifford and Mitch broke up. But Peter got to know her brother Nigel in the early 70s. Peter was walking up Putney High Street, I think, and Nigel was working in a shop or something, and Peter was outside the window gurning at him and taking the piss. And they were mates, and they went camping together when Peter had left Fleetwood Mac, and they hung out a lot. And I think Nigel, quite rightly, probably thought to himself, why don't we get a band together? And they were in the process of doing some music. Peter had been working with a bunch of other musicians after he quit Fleetwood Mac. By no means did he stop playing, and by no means did the Munich incident render him incapable of doing anything. That's absolute rubbish. His playing, if anything, was better than it had ever been. He was working with other musicians, and Nigel was somebody that Nigel played a bit of bass and a bit of percussion. And Peter was doing quite well. I spoke to a sax player called John Altman a couple of months ago, and he was saying that he saw Peter every day for a year in 1971, 70 to 71. And they were working on projects together. Peter was really upbeat and busy. And then he got the call to go back and rejoin Fleetwood Mac to please help us, Jeremy's left. And I don't think he needed to do that. And it wasn't good for him. And he swore, he turned the air blue. And Clifford Davis, please come out and save our butts. And going back to a relationship that you've just broken up from, even for a few weeks, is not a good idea ever in any capacity.
So that's when he
it didn't do him much good. So Peter got back from that trip, but what he insisted on, I want to take Nigel with me. Now, it was either him saying, I'll come and do this, but you need to have Nigel Watson, or it might have been Nigel saying, well, what about me? We're mates, aren't we? Can I come too? But anyway, that was the beginning of the Splinter Group, actually, because they made 1971. They made a couple of records together. Nigel Watson and Peter Green with a couple of other musicians cut some tracks together.
Were they called? Was that the Colours?
They weren't called the Splinter Group. It was called, actually, Peter went out as Peter Green and Friends, which is what his last band had the same name.
Have you heard of
this was
Have you heard of a group called Colours?
That was later.
That was late. Okay.
That was later. No, this was very, very early on. And Peter was, when he came back from that trip to America, he was not in a good way. He had a really bad experience with some guy in New Orleans who kept him up all night, feeding him weed. And that was the night Peter said, somebody stole my soul. And I think that that was, if there was a Munich incident, it was actually that. And that's when he got back and did the session with BB King. And it was the first time you ever heard Peter Green not playing brilliantly. In fact, the solo that he plays on that Peter Green London sessions is, he actually asked for them to wipe it off future pressings of the record because he's turned up unshaven, few beers on the amps behind him, very unlike Peter. Duster Bennett plays triumphantly brilliantly. Bobby Keys plays great. It's such a great session. And then it gets to that moment. Okay, you know, Peter Green plays a solo and he flubs a few lines. It's kind of out of tune and it's just like flat. The fizz has gone. And you think, huh? Really? And then one more, and BB's sort of one more, and if listen to it, it's not bad, but he's not playing like he did 2 years before in Fleetwood Mac, which was just astonishing.
So then
it all went a bit.
Then we got In the Skies and all that.
Well, that was 1978. So Peter went very quiet for a few years. He went on a kibbutz and did a bunch of other things, and he ended up wanting to join the PLO after 2 weeks out there. That's another story. But he got married. He went and met up with Fleetwood Mac in the States and America and married a woman, had a daughter called Rosebud. And then he decided, no, I want to come back home to England. It's not working out for me. And that's when he met Peter Vernon Kell, and the In the Skies album was put together. Snowy White helped him.
Yeah, because I mean, Snowy White had that. He had that beautiful, again, out of phase tone on his gold top.
One of the only people that can. And Snowy, interestingly, I saw him a few times back in the day, and he actually was in a band with Mick Taylor, which was astonishing. Colin Allen, who'd been in the Blues Breakers as well with Mick Taylor and John Mayall.
He was in Thin Lizzy.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So he played gorgeous guitar, and Peter wanted him to play all the lead guitar, and he said, no, this is your album.
Can I just chip in here?
Yeah.
1992, yeah?
Yeah.
When I first started guitar, they released all those albums. They re-released them. I bought them thinking that was Peter Green playing. I didn't realize, I didn't know anything about Snowy White then in 92. So in my head, it was Peter Green. But then I later found out.
On what?
In the Skies.
No, it is.
No, you know that lead. You know that lead playing. I'm pretty sure that's Snowy White.
No, that's only one track where Snowy plays lead. This is a myth. This is a myth about that album. Peter does play that. It was Snowy that said, no, you have to play the lead.
It's beautiful, man. It's beautiful black guitar.
And Peter's playing's great. And Peter flubbed one line in the session, and Peter Vernon Kell told me that he repaired the line, and it really was just a couple of notes. He repaired the line when everyone had gone home. And I said, well, which track? He said, I'm not telling you. I love Peter so much. I'm not betraying him.
Okay.
He played, but he said he played great on those records.
So
after that, the Splinter Group, I think the Splinter Group was something that was always at the back of Nigel Watson's mind. And he'd become a builder, and I think everyone had given up hope of Peter ever playing again. The solo career started okay. In the Skies was good. And then there was What You Gonna Do, which was all right. And then Little Dreamer, where Peter's voice is he's half singing. He sounds like he's already not into it. And then there are a couple of other solo albums that are really not great. And then he just went off the radar in about 1984. And when I got into him in 88, the idea that Peter would ever play again was absolutely no way. Snowy White said to me, I said, so have you seen him? He said, no. I said, do you think he'll ever play again? He said, I'm afraid, son, no way. He's never going to, no chance. And the next time I saw Snowy White was at a Splinter Group gig, Christmas 96. And I said, do you remember what you said? And he was standing, he'd come in towards the end of the show. He'd just flown in.
Yeah.
And it was Shepherd's Bush Empire, the Christmas show, Splinter Group. And Snowy's like, hey, man. And he just stood there with this look on his face of, wow, because Peter was playing great that night. Really good atmosphere. So what happened was there were stories about Peter re-emerging, and I didn't believe them. 1995, and there was that whole egg and potato man pretending to be Peter. That's another story.
In Southend?
Somewhere like that. It was somewhere in Essex.
I'm from Essex.
And I knew where Peter was. And I remember having a job interview in Richmond in 95 and just sitting in the park near where Peter lived and not really thinking about, I hadn't seen him for a while. And then I saw him walking up the road with a really good looking woman. I mean, she looked like,
he's a guitarist.
She was his sort of age group. She looked like the Cathy McGowan hair. And it was the first time I'd ever seen Peter with someone. And he's with this, and it would be around, I found out later that she'd gone down there to basically get him to move in with her and get him out of that. He was on his own and things weren't going great. And she kind of rescued him a little bit. And his brother, particularly Joe's dad and mum, looked after Peter around that time too, down by the south coast. So she took Peter in and he stayed at her place. And then her brother, Nigel Watson, turned up. And I think he'd always wanted this. I'm going to do a band with him. He had to wait 25 years for the opportunity to come up again. And I think he probably thought
some money kind of like, I can get famous doing
this. I don't know about that. I think it was, I don't want to say that. I think that's
Sorry, guys.
I don't know. I don't know. I just think the idea had been there for a long time. And I thought maybe he thought I had the opportunity in 71 and I should have pushed Peter a bit harder. I'm not going to miss this opportunity again. And it was Nigel that was saying, go on, Pete, why don't you have a go? Because Nigel would turn up at his sister's place after work and sit down and have a cup of tea with Peter and start playing Robert Johnson songs on the guitar. And he said he could see Peter looking at it and kind of, he could tell he was still interested. Go on. And he handed the guitar to Peter. And he said the guitar playing was almost non-existent to start with, but they cut Peter's nails and he began slowly to play again. Now,
did they record an album first, or did they?
Mitch Reynolds knew Cozy Powell because she owned the Fleetwood Mobile Studio, and she'd, that had been part of her income that was part of her divorce settlement, I think. So she had the mobile unit, so she knew a lot of rock stars. And
who was she married to?
By then, she wasn't married to anyone, I don't think.
But was she married?
She'd been married to Clifford Davis, Fleetwood Mac's manager.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
See, this is the connection. It goes right back to the end of Fleetwood Mac. So she'd always been fond of Peter back in the day because he'd been very kind to her, and so she had connections in the music business. And Cozy was interested in the idea if Peter was going to play again, he wouldn't mind working with him. Right. Cozy knew Neil Murray. They'd been in Whitesnake together.
Yeah.
Now you might not have thought that was the ideal, rhythm section for Peter Green, especially as he was playing quite quietly and tentatively. But they put that together, and I think the Splinter Group was named by Peter. And it was almost sort of, this is a side issue. This is a kind of, I'll do this as a little side project.
Yeah.
I don't think he was thinking of taking to the world stage and conquering the world again. And maybe other people had different ideas. And I think I know right from the word go that Cozy was not comfortable because he could see Peter struggling. His voice wasn't really strong anymore. And also Nigel wasn't used to being on stage. He was a builder. They're both competent players. And Nigel played really good guitar, but then so do a lot of people playing in pubs all over the country.
That's why he came, and no disrespect to Nigel, because I know has he passed away, Nigel?
Nigel died a couple of years before Peter, and very bad. He got the symptoms of Parkinson's disease when he was touring with Fleetwood Mac in 71 with Peter, and he put it down to stress. And it was another 30 years, it seemed to rear its head again. And then he got really sick and fell, and not a good story. And, he's got kids, and I think he was also thinking, I've got young kids now. I've got to make this work. Peter, with his royalties coming in, it wasn't so important to him to have to do this. But for everyone else involved, it's that responsibility that was put on Peter's shoulders.
Yeah, especially
I think and Cozy Powell was thinking, this is going to be too much. I can see this ending badly. Cozy played with them for a few months and then pulled away, and they had to get someone else in, and they got a really good rhythm section for what I think was the best lineup, the most appropriate lineup for the Splinter Group. But I saw them their first few gigs in 96 and 97 with that Cozy Powell, Neil Murray lineup.
I wasn't. That would have been interesting to see. I was never really a fan. I don't want to speak ill of the Dead. I was never really a fan of Nigel's guitar playing. I don't know why. It's probably because I'm such a Peter Green fan myself. I just couldn't stand someone else, replacing Danny Kerwin or
Mike Vernon was also at Guildford, and he was quite critical of the performance. And he said, "What's the point of people paying money to go and see Peter Green playing this stuff, and they're actually hearing Nigel Watson playing all this lead stuff with Peter Green standing 3 feet away from him? What's this all about?" Right. And at first I thought, well, Peter can't play these things. For the first few songs of the gig, I thought maybe his playing's not all that. And then they came on for the second half and he played the stumble. Peter played the lead. Right. And that, I mean, I'm a blubber baby, but I was crying my eyes out on the front row. I'll
be there hugging you if I was there.
All these cameras were zooming in on me. He's crying. I just like the last time I'd seen Peter was at a bus stop in Wimbledon, and he was in such a bad way, and I'd given him a hug, and suddenly he's up there doing it, and he played the stumble beautifully. It sounded like the Freddie King original. It was not like the Blues Breakers version he'd done, which was very Clapton-esque, hard attack. This was just a beautiful, tasteful, middle-aged man version of a beautiful. I mean, it was just great. And he got great reviews in the Guardian for that gig. A peerless display of playing by Peter Green.
I met him in about 95 in the street outside Denmark Street, and we spoke for 30 minutes. Now, a normal person,
it's a long conversation for him.
But a normal person, like as in a normal famous person like Eric Clapton, would not stop on the side of the street and talk to an unknown young person and his girlfriend for 30 minutes.
Well, I think Peter just wanted to be normal. One of the things that he needed to do was to touch base with normality. And I used to see him around Putney, Wimbledon, Wandsworth, on buses, just talking to people, being an ordinary man.
Yeah, but I mean
that's how he felt comfortable.
I mean that in the best possible way, because he was so humble to me and so nice to me that I always thought, like I know a lot of African musicians like Tumani Debati and all these guys. They would speak to me. They would speak to me for half an hour. But Elton John wouldn't, or Eric Clapton wouldn't, because they're busy. They've got more important things to do. But people like Peter Green and Tumani Diabate, Ala Fakatori, they would stop.
Yeah, no, it's poor. Sorry, Tumani. Yeah, my goodness, what a week it's been. John Mayall, Tumani Diabate.
Yeah,
it's quite a gig up. Quite a gig up there. So Peter with the Splinter Group, I think that his playing was beautiful, and then Nigel was like I said, he played well, but it wasn't what people were there to see. And I think there were problems with, I think when an album came out, it was the Robert Johnson songbook, and Nigel was upset that his name wasn't in as big a writing as Peter's on the sleeve. I don't know if I believe these. I don't want to believe these stories, but they really.
How did it end?
They were like brothers that fought, and it was almost like a Greek tragedy. And
how did it end?
Pete Stroud was their bass player, and he was talking to me about the last show, and he wanted to carry on the Splinter Group, and he said there was one member of the band that we all had a problem with. I shouldn't really say this. I really shouldn't. It was not good. I think there was Peter and Nigel had issues with each other, and Peter just split. He went to Sweden. I was working with somebody that worked at the record company, and she came up to me and said, Peter's gone mad again and run away. What? And that's not what happened. He just felt menaced and anxious, and I've had enough of this. There's no joy in this anymore for me. So he split, went to Sweden to stay with a girlfriend, and Nigel and he had no contact after that. I think it's incredibly sad. Because actually, if you listen to those Splinter Group albums, especially the later ones that Roger Cotton produced, and Peter Brown produced one of their records, it's so good. The band sounds fantastic. The rhythm section was great. They had a sort of more of a jazzy drummer. Their drummer, Larry Tolfrey, really listened. And he and Pete Stroud, who also played a bit of string bass, they worked really well together. And when it needed to be quiet and calm, it was. And I saw them at the Albert Hall, that lineup with John Mayall, and then the Splinter Group with that lineup, and it was just beautiful. I think I'd rather remember the fact that Peter came back, and without Nigel Watson, it wouldn't have happened. That's got to be said. Peter would have been quite happy to just pootle along. Nigel got him playing again, and whatever problems they might have had with each other, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, I think Peter probably wound him up by just bottling out of things at the last minute. He wasn't in a position where he could commit to anything, Peter. He'd been the breadwinner in the family. He'd been the breadwinner within Fleetwood Mac. He'd had the pressure put on him because he was just overloaded with talent.
But, you know, like,
and he wanted to be free. He wanted to be an ordinary man riding the buses around London, wandering around the shops and listening to the birds singing,
fishing,
and sitting in his garden. He loved fishing. And when Joe told him how much his guitar had gone for,
yeah,
and Joe was very good at keeping the fans in touch with how Peter was, because he understood that this wasn't hero worship. They genuinely loved and cared about Peter. So he'd post a few photos and say, I told Uncle Peter today how much his guitar went for. And he said, can we go to the tackle shop? I need to get some more of that bait we got last week. He was not interested in the guitar or how much it went for at all.
No,
no interest whatsoever.
Because, you know, was it Kirk Hammett who bought it?
Kirk Hammett.
He went to visit him, and actually Kirk said he couldn't believe how disinterested Peter was. He just wasn't interested.
Just didn't want to know. I had a lovely story about Kirk Hammett. You know, John Mayall's house went up in a wildfire.
Yep.
And all these tapes and all this collection of antique pornography went up in flames, all the rest of it. But there were the wildfires. Kirk Hammett was speaking recently about how he'd broken Peter's guitar. He said, and I didn't feel that it was mine. He carved his initials into the back of it when he got it, right?
Right.
And then it was leaning up against a coffee table at Kirk Hammett's house, and he could see it in slow motion about to fall onto the floor. And it cracked the neck or whatever. So it's got another repair in it. But I know it's definitely mine. And then the interviewer was saying something like, and there were wildfires in your house. What happened? Oh, man, it was dangerous. We got out quick. And what about the guitars? Oh, 10 got rescued. They said, you went back and rescued 10 of your guitars? Because, well, I sent my wife in with a list. Can you imagine? You've got to love him. You've got to. I cannot dislike him, but there's something very childlike about that guy. I sent my wife. Can you imagine what kind of a wife? She must love him. Can you get these 10, please, from this burning house? So Greeny is saved. Peter,
you got a good wife when she does that, right?
I don't know. I'm not a Metallica fan. But I think Peter could play any guitar and it would sound like Peter Green. This is something that Cozy Powell recognized when they were working together for the first time. And there was a moment in the studio where Peter had been messing around and and noodling and then suddenly he just got into the zone again. And he said, that's it. That's the Peter Green sound.
Can I give you a quote?
Yeah.
I once read, I was reading this interview, and somebody said, we were recording a Splinter album. I think it was Nigel Watson was saying, Peter would always want to listen to his guitar takes.
Yeah.
And so the only way we could get him not to stay out of the mixing process, we'd just give him a pornography magazine. And
we're going to get taken off the air. No, PVK told me that they were working in Soho recording an album, and Peter was just sitting like this and kind of not doing anything. So Peter Vernon Kell went out and just got a couple of girls, said, look, here's 20 quid each. Could you just stand up and flash in the middle and then get back down behind the amps? Yeah, all right. So Peter's there, and suddenly these girls stood up and flashed and then went back down behind the speakers, and Peter was suddenly like attentive. And over the speakers, he goes, okay, Peter, if you want to see them again, you're going to have to play some guitar.
Yeah. That's how it happens. Yeah. So
Peter was suddenly interested in the session again, but
yeah. But no, I mean, it's really interesting about the Splinter Group because not many people know how it started, James, and how it finished, myself included. But you
I
seem
think
to,
that I don't know you see, I think also legally none of the band were allowed to talk about it. And you're always going to imagine things being worse than they actually were. And the two main guys, and in fact Roger Cotton passed away as well, and he was a really lovely fella. He was the guy in that band that was amiable, open-hearted, kind, brilliant keyboard player, produced the band well, and he was great on stage. You know, when I saw them, and he did a lot of talking and kept things upbeat. And he was saying, I think that Boyzone had been playing at the Bic the week before, and he said, "Well, we're not exactly a boy band. Sorry, ladies, but why settle for a six-pack when you can have a couple of barrels?" And they're all patting their big bellies. Um, and Peter, you know, I think he enjoyed a lot of those gigs. He really did enjoy it, and he got to travel the world.
yeah,
They went to America. They recorded with a bunch of blues guys. I think ultimately it was a great thing that happened, and it led to other things, other projects. The last project Peter had was called Peter Green and Friends. Um, and actually, of all the things he did, I think he played and sang better in the last few gigs in 2010. He was starting to sound really good. And then again, he just, for whatever reason, he just completely pulled back.
yeah,
And Mike Dodd, I think the guitar player who worked with him at the time, and in that band, he insisted Peter played all the lead, and Mike just played a bit of rhythm and sang a couple of things. But it was more, the focus was more on Peter. They had a string bass player, and it sounded fantastic. And Peter got a bit more daring
my great
with his
friend,
playing.
an amazing guitar player, Henry Kaiser.
Oh yeah.
He's based in America. He saw Peter with Carlos Santana. I don't know if Henry knows Carlos, but I think he does. But because I think he was speaking to Carlos after the gig, and they did Black Magic Woman, and Carlos was trying to get, as far as I can remember. I mean, Henry would have to remind me, but I think what happened was Carlos just wanted Peter to play Black Magic Woman, but Peter again just didn't seem interested.
Well,
With Carlos. But
I think there
they,
was
I'm not sure. I think they got on stage. I think they got on stage
there
together.
was the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame
Yeah.
induction. Fleetwood Mac were there, and Peter took to the stage with them, but he didn't play with them. He played with Santana, and I think Mick was trying to get him to play with Santana and do Black Magic Woman, and he played him a recording of him playing it in 1970 and said, can you play like this, Peter? And Peter was listening to it and said, "What's this?" He said, "This is you." Huh? And he looked like he was hearing something he'd never heard before.
Yeah, because you listen to, of course, that's that solo, because the live solo on Boston Tea Party.
Oh, stunning! But doesn't Danny take that? Isn't it?
Nope.
Yeah.
That is from that lick there is from the live. No, definitely no. Peter's playing that solo.
Yeah.
On the outro, because the outro.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they trade licks together. Yeah. Yeah.
That's brilliant. And they go.
Yeah. Yeah, it really rocks, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's really
Peter
good,
Peter was playing very slow, and so he took to the stage with Santana. You can see Santana trying to get him to play like he used to, and almost like goading him on. And
Henry was telling me.
Peter's just standing there, and apparently in the auditorium you couldn't hear Peter at all. And they managed to find a feed from the guitar for the broadcast later, or if you watch it now, they've boosted the volume on Peter's guitar so you can hear what he was playing, and it's quite nice. But it's a very calm, rather than the fire. It's embers
because he was
rather than flames.
Yeah, he had fire.
Rather than flames, it's just embers. And Peter, a lot of Peter's playing.
He had fire in the Blues Breakers, man. He had fire. He had fire, man.
I think Peter knew that he was a short distance runner, and that he did something. And you were talking about John Mayall giving kudos to Cyril Davis and Alexis Corner. Somebody asked Eric Clapton, "What's it like to be the greatest white blues guitar player there?" And he said, "Don't ask me, ask Peter Green." And when Peter was playing well,
we've got 5 minutes left, guys. Because one thing is, you may have known, I was interrupting.
No, you have to. I can't stop talking.
There's a reason why, because we've only got 5 minutes left. That's the reason, and I wanted to get the whole story. But
yeah, as Eric said, Peter was, and when Peter was playing at his best, he was the greatest electric blues guitar player that ever lived. There, I said it.
There you go.
Black, white, or green. And there was some session where, and this, if they make a film, somebody said that they've written a script for a film. There's a screenplay on the go, and they're trying to get funding to make a biopic. But there was a scene in the studio, and I think it's in Chess, and one of the guys there said, "Who's this playing?" Listening to a playback from the Blues Jab at Chess. Somebody wandered in and said, "Who's this?" And they said,
"Let me see."
I thought you were. Are you black or white? He goes, "No, I'm green." Are you black or white? No, I'm green. I'm Peter Green, you know.
Exactly.
And that's it.
Greeny magic.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, like for me, you know, when I was 17, I started playing guitar when I was 17. For me, it's all about Peter Green. I mean, and Eric Clapton, he was kind of like just this really incredible torchbearer of this blues rock, you know, plugging a Les Paul into a Marshall. That was his thing.
Peter wouldn't have done what he did without him.
No. And I have to remind people that, because everyone always goes, "Oh, Peter's a much better guitar." Yeah, but Peter was celebrating Clapton. Peter
exactly.
And if you read any interviews around that time, Peter always says Clapton's the best, and that's what Peter says. And so it's nice.
No. They liked each other. They were good friends, and Eric used to bump into Peter in Richmond, and he never treated him any differently, even though he was supposedly mad or whatever. And John Mayall was the same. He treated Peter the same. They were just really good friends that loved one another. And Peter was without Eric Clapton, Peter wouldn't have been able to, he wouldn't have had the focus and the direction, and also just to get that gig with John Mayall, to get that break. And John, you know, bless him as well. It's going to be quite a gig up there, isn't it?
Can you end on my good friend, can you end on an anecdote? Any memories of meeting Peter Green? I mean, I'll give you one that he said to me. Said to me, this is like 95 when I met him. It's 30 years ago, so it's shocking. But all I can remember was I think he was more shocked because I was like 25. I was 25, or younger, 25, and with my young girlfriend, Essex girlfriend.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was saying to him, you know, I knew all the songs, and I was saying this song because I was his number one fan at that time. Still am, and apart from you, and he was shocked that I knew this information, and he was like saying to me, "How come you know my music? You're too young." That's what he said to me.
Yeah.
He said, "You're too young. How do you know my music?" Because in that day, this is before the internet, man.
Sure.
95, man. The internet hadn't.
I was very lucky to hear his music, and I think I remember what he said at the end of the Splinter Group debut gig in Guildford, and I'm stood there with tear-stained face.
I'll be hugging you,
and
man.
He was beaming, and I've said this before. It was the first time I'd ever seen Peter Green smiling. He played brilliantly. The last track was "Going Down." I'm going down, and he played.
He should have quit.
He played stunningly well. And the thing he said to the audience at the end was, "Thank you for my freedom."
That's amazing.
And it was like he'd come out of prison.
I just want to say
and the sun was setting at the end of that gig. He was bathed in this beautiful sunlight. He could have, you know, he could have walked across the.
Clapton was there. Eric Clapton was there as well.
And Eric said, "You know, he was much better than I thought he was going to be." And he probably thought, "Hang on a minute, I better watch it."
Right, that's what. Because I mean, what a great thing that Eric took the time and made sure
a lot of love and a lot of mutual respect. And I think that Eric must be feeling very lonely now.
Yeah,
but he's got good faith. And he said about John Mayall, he said, "I'll see you soon, but not yet."
Not yet. And on that note, guys, we're going to end because
bless you all.
We've got 10 seconds.
Enjoy.
Thanks.
Listen to the beautiful music, and rest in peace, Peter.
Yeah, and we're both going to be back soon with some more shows.
Let's do it. Enjoy yourself. Go to Cuba.
Okay.
It's fun.
Thank you. God bless.
Yeah.